And we're happy today to have Joanne Lads from Noble+Eaton. She was recently actually at my school, the Liaison American School, because we hosted the SGIS, the Swiss Group of International Schools Conference. And Joanne will be at ECIS this week as well in Stuttgart for Noble+Eaton. She has some comments in the introduction that you probably read. The environment is the curriculum, and the curriculum is the environment. We'll be curious to see what that means. And you're also advertising for us 10 practical design features. We'll see if we get through all 10. When you have questions, Joanne, do you want to have people wait with questions till after your first 15 minutes, or do you want questions as you go, or how would you like?
I'm fine to have some questions as we go through. That's absolutely fine. But if it comes further in the presentation, if it's better, I will say, if you don't mind, I'll defer till.
That's perfect. Okay, so we're informal. We're just here to learn, and we're very happy to have you with us, Joanne. So take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. 15 minutes. I will try to give you a very quick overview. So yeah, please do ask questions if you've got any questions at all. So I'm just going to share my screen, and so 5%. So allow. So hopefully you can see.
We're seeing you. Yeah, seeing your screen.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay. So so I work with a team at Noble+Eaton. We're part of the ENVO Plan group, and we design thriving spaces. And today I'd like to tell you a little bit about the theory behind how we do that, what these 10 features are, and why it's important to us because of the impact that it can have. So we create thriving spaces for forward-looking students and their schools. So what do these thriving spaces look like, and how do we do it? Well, we start by asking lots and lots of questions. So what's the vision for your school? How do you bring that vision alive within the policies that you've got? How do you make sure that those policies are then being brought alive every day, day in, day out through those practices? How are they being lived? And therefore, is that creating learner agency and thriving spaces? And if it isn't quite where you want it to be, how can you use the design of the physical environment to facilitate it being where you want it to be? And there's a great quote that we refer to, and this is one by Sir Winston Churchill, where we shape our buildings and thereafter they shape us. And this came at a point where during the bombings of London, the House of Commons actually was completely flattened, and Sir Winston Churchill understood the power of being strong and being seen to be strong through the design of the environment. So he wanted to rebuild the House of Commons in exactly the same way as it was before. And so by doing this, it's saying, actually, we can therefore show that we're strong and that we can continue to move forward and do these things. So hence the quote. So how have we done what we have done? We're evidence-led or research-informed, and this information is the state of learning spaces. That's where we started. So we went to over 200 schools and actually asked them a whole host of questions about the state of their learning spaces, based around the 10 features that I'll show you later. Some highlights of the data that came back was that there was a picture of untapped potential, with 44% of leaders believing existing learning spaces are preventing students reaching their full potential, and 78% thinking that they're not helping persuade parents to choose their school. So if this is the picture for learning spaces, we thought, well, actually, we could do some more research because schools are making their move. So 76% of leaders felt that improving these learning environments should be a higher priority for their school. So if they're going to do that, what are the different things we can help them with? So we've done many designs on learning spaces. So we thought, well, let's collect some more data, because the more data we have, the more informed we are. So we also have started just collecting together the research on the state of boarding spaces. So these are the same research questions, but this time with a focus on boarding. So this project has been done over 6 months, 7 countries, more than 60 schools, and 15,000 boarders. And so we're starting to pull this data together, and we'll be able to share this information with you very, very, very soon. And because we love our research, we have, whilst we're just finishing this project, we're also launching our next project, which is into sixth form spaces. So we're going to ask the similar sort of questions, but this time with a focus on sixth forms. And you might think, well, why do we do this? We want to make sure that we have the greatest impact possible. And the greatest impact possible, we feel, is by making sure our project brief is as strong as it can be. So we're collecting this data to make sure we have a really clear baseline on where you are at. And then this enables us then to take those project briefs and move forward even more quickly. So what's the impact that we have when we design these spaces using our methodology? Boosting cognition, promoting well-being, not just neuro-inclusion, but also empowering, and also performance improving, so that behaviours, attitudes to learning are improved, because all of these things are connected. And so we've done a lot of research behind this, which is what I want to go into a little bit more to show you how we've taken that research and put this at the forefront of our methodology. So before we start, we need to connect some language. So I came from the language of and my experience from schools. And so the terms that I was used to was the vision, as I said right at the very beginning. What's the vision? How's the vision written into your policies? How are the policies brought alive? And I was used to the terms through the academic and the pastoral teams to create this focus on the learner and to create learner agency. As I'm looking at the design language of the ECIS conference that's coming up, I'm seeing that the vision is being talked about in terms of sustainability. The policies are being talked about in terms of what's the diversity and inclusion within that. And then this goes further to say, and how is this driven through the human capacity and the dimensions of well-being, with the ultimate goal of creating this human flourishing, which is fascinating. And this topic of human flourishing is quite huge, and the way in which it builds on the definition of well-being, the way in which it builds on the sense of belonging and Maslow's hierarchy is everything that we talk about, and the research that goes behind that. So that's what I'm getting excited about, ready for the rest of the week. And so hopefully I can connect the work and show you some more examples at ECIS at the end of the week. So this is just a snapshot. So the design language that I've been brought into is the design language of architecture. And this is where the little snapshot to invite you to this presentation was: the environment is your curriculum. So this is the vision, that the place can be used as a driver for change. And what goes into that is the policies, which I now understand, or I've translated that into the form of that something takes. And that's actually built on the function that you're actually asking this, whatever it is, to take. But without the aesthetics. Here's a question, with thanks to Dr. Adam England, who's introduced me to all of this. What's the opposite of aesthetics? Opposite of aesthetics. Anyone? No? Anesthetic. So being numb. So there, I had not joined up those dots before. So that's the reason why I've linked this in my connection of language to the pastoral or the dimensions of the well-being. So, so if we are getting the environment right, the form and the function, then that facilitates this blend of, rather than a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this blended, blending all those ideas together to create these thriving spaces. So that is how I have translated my experience in schools into a design architecture, and hopefully going to connect that to lots of the exciting new ideas that are going to come out at the conference as well at the end of the week. So how do we then do this? Oh, I'm just stuck on there. There we go. So here is a few of the analogies that I use to describe the environment as your curriculum, and I've called it architectural alchemy. So one example is if you take a carbon atom, and a carbon atom in a different environment will give you something completely different. So under high temperature and pressure, each carbon atom joins to 4 others to form a tetrahedral arrangement, and that is your diamond. Hardest structure known, cuts through other things, is shiny, extremely high melting point, lots of others. But if you then, if you were to put this carbon atom under low temperature and pressure, actually you get layers of 3 carbon atoms joined together. They slide over each other. It can conduct electricity, and it's used in your pencils instead. So that's my example of the environment, is the different conditions of the environment actually have an impact. The other way you could think about it is, there's so many different ways. Lego bricks. There isn't one sort of Lego brick. And when you are trying to layer up conditions for or learning journeys, if you like, it's not just the individual brick. It's about the way in which it's connected to something else. And also, you need to start thinking about the learning journey in the environment in more than one dimension, because actually it's a 3-dimensional way in which you can connect data and information together, which is where this book, and I've read many books, and there's a couple that I definitely like to recommend. And this one is The Shaping of Us by Lily Bernheimer. And this is called The Big Fix, this photograph of this page. And on the left-hand side is our very rational linear approach to constructing learning experiences. And on the right-hand side is actually a representation probably of a neural avalanche or a fractal pattern or a learning journey in the way in which it organically grows and connects things from different and associates things from lots of different areas. And how we build those up, I see, is a bit more like the contour of a landscape, and the way in which you've got these layers of learning, each building up on top of each other. And also a bit like Jenga. And if you take one of those bricks out, actually things can then all change as well. So we need to think about things as being far more dynamic and organic. And when we do that, it gives us a completely different lens to think about things and think through things. And today I was just actually having a conversation about the changing of the clocks. I'm just finding another book here that I've got that I want to show you. So the changing of the clocks and the hour of the daylight saving, and your relationship between space and time, and how that changes when you just change that 1 hour, and how that changed that. But I could talk for hours just about that, so I won't. So I will keep on topic. Another book that really brought it all to home for me was this one, Welcome to Your World. And this talks all about embodied cognition and about collective efficacy, and about how the way in which buildings have been thoughtfully designed through a project brief, but they don't always necessarily have the desired impact. If not, why not? And which work and why do they work? So we're really, really specific with the concept, the project brief, why we're designing, what we're designing for. So that's a lot about the theory. Here it is on a page, I hope. So just to summarize some of that philosophy onto one page is, your environment is everything. Everything you see, hear, smell, taste, touch. And that's the embodied cognition part. The filter of the environment through to your perception of that context of that specific moment in time is through language. And that language can be mathematical, it can be spoken, it can be so many different ways. Body language. Language is just so much more than just me talking as I am now with my hands and as I do a lot. So this filters to your perception. The perception then is, this feeds into the personality and attitudes, your values, beliefs, the motivation. And again, over the last couple of days, well, we're talking about what's authentic motivation versus motivation that is actually for different reasons. But what is true authentic motivation? How's that seen? How does that link to the behaviors that you therefore see? But if you want to bring about a change, all this is linked to your brain structure and the example that I was just giving on the page before, and how all of these things are connected together, and that your brain is moldable, is changeable. All those connections are changeable. And that's also linked to epigenetics. So whilst you might have a fixed code, through epigenetics, it actually facilitates the way in which the environment is actually driving some of the aspects that you might see. So can you change things through using the environment? Well, with this model of change, we believe that you absolutely can. We do it by connecting place with the people and the pedagogy, because we say if you want to change one of those, think of it as a cog. So you twist the place, and all of a sudden the people and the pedagogy are so they change, and the magic happens when you just get it just right in the middle. And so you can use these as your drivers for change, but the place underpins it. And again, you get that collective efficacy when you get all of those things right: the place, the people, and the pedagogy. There's more detail that goes into this, and I've overlaid this with ergonomic principles and thoughts about organization and cognition and the physical space. So I can more than happy to go into a little bit more detail on those. But there are a lot of people that do these sorts of things. So why us? What's our USP, if you like? What's a little bit different? Well, I would say, again, linking it back to the science, we can bring about this change in a shorter period of time. So what we're doing is, if I use the phase diagram here as an example, if you want to change from a solid into a liquid into a gas, you've got to give it some energy for it to be able to do that. And when it's changing from a solid into a liquid, it looks as if nothing's happening. You get this sort of plateau, where in actual fact, what you're doing is you're reorganizing all of those atoms into the different arrangements to facilitate that next change taking place. Well, if you want that to happen more quickly, we collect more data, overlay the data so that we can see when those changes are happening and predict them slightly earlier, so that therefore these flat bits where that reorganization is happening can actually happen in a shorter space of time. And that's because of the amount of data that we collect on people, pedagogy, and place. So my last analogy is, think about it as the London taxi cab research. It says that the hippocampus is really, really big. So the amount of information that these taxi drivers have to be able to navigate around the streets within London. But if you take that taxi driver and you put that taxi driver into another city, how quickly can they adapt to learn and navigate to go around that new city? So hopefully it could be really, really quickly. Can they transfer those skills from navigating around London into somewhere else? Well, this is where my interest in technology comes in, because you can do two things. You can use the technology to upskill yourself really quickly to go around, but then you have to start to sort of if you are going to stay in that place, not rely on the technology totally, but to be able to blend the two together. So you need to be able to use the technology when you need to, but then build up your skills to make sure that you can do things without it as well. And how that's changing how we learn, for me, is absolutely fascinating. When do you use the technology, when not to use the technology, and to really start to enhance learning. And that's why I believe we have so much impact, because we think of how to improve cognition, well-being, performance, and the neuro empowerment on a different level, through a different angle. So what are the 10 features that we use? We use the environmental features: acoustics, lighting, heating, ventilation, and we've got wayfinding, and we've got biophilia, furniture, storage technology, and colour for those. So these are the features that we put into our designs. The reason that we're a little bit different is we don't look at each of those designs, we don't look at each of those features separately. We combine them together in what we call biophilic design. And so we look at how, starting to use the terms naturalization, individualization, and stimulation. How can we get the balance of those right within our designs to have a greater impact? And these are some of the designs that we've done. You can see some of the acoustic baffles in here. You can see some of the features that we have introduced in our designs to enhance the learning experience, and to create a sense of belonging, because that underpins all of it, as I was saying before in the analogy. And sometimes a sense of belonging can be created by independent work. It can be created through collaboration. It can be created through so many different ways. That's why the concept and the project brief is so important, and getting to under the skin to understand your project. So the future of learning, if we're going to embrace biophilic design, gathering data and connecting it together in new ways has to also be underpinned by salutogenic principles, and making sure that we are preparing learners for uncertain futures, to be able to be adaptable, to navigate, to do all of these things. And that's really important. Here's an example. This example is from a school where the project brief started out looking at the periodic table. So the conversation was, how can we, really passionate about this, what can we do? Well, the periodic table is 100 elements. How can we take that, for me, amazing categorization, actually back one step? So you've got groups and periods and all this amazing theory in this table. But to put that into a design, we went back to earth, air, fire, and water, which was also a way of grouping the elements together. And so we made a design around each of these different features. Earth was a collaborative zone, the fire was the cafe, the water and the air are the silent study rooms and the library. And so we use the colours, the tones, and the strengths that come through in these to categorise the different rooms. So we have, this is where it starts. So there was a space. And from this space, it's like, well, what do we allocate to where? And you can see that the design team work very hands-on, scribbling notes around it to look at all these different areas. And then from there, we move into 3D visuals and bringing the design to life. So if I show you, so here are the different zones that I was just talking about. So the colours are matching. You can see the different shapes, and all the theory that we're talking about is underpinned by these designs. So in the collaboration zone, top left, you've got the psychology of the curves and the approachability in there. You've also got zoning within here. And you've got soft surfaces, all helping with the acoustics. It's quite a big room in here. You've got these individual booths, some of them with tops on them to really help zone different spaces, but you've also got these booths that are far more open. You've got high tables, again, helps with the approach psychology, because some people will just walk up and start having conversations and chatting and collaborating, but whilst still working. It's really fantastic to go in and see how the girls are using this collaborative zone. The cafe, a far more vibrant, high arousal, really bold colours space on the top right there. Again, lots of collaboration going on, but different sort of atmosphere and work in there. Library, you can see lots of lines of sight still across the whole space, but you've got lots of storage. You've got, again, zoning using the carpet, acoustic baffles, calmer colour palette, which is very similar then to the silent study space as well, where you've got individual booths, but you've also got a central area as well, but lots of quiet, focused work. So that's our project process. Just to show you that we follow a REBA stages of design, going all the way from the strategy, which is really important to us, getting those first bits right, so that if we get that bit right, we know that by the time we get to contract and building it, we are going to meet the brief and have the impact that we would like to. That is a whistle-stop tour of quite a few years of reading and research into neuroscience, architecture, and psychology and science, and goodness knows what else.
Yeah,
I hope you got lots of questions.
Yeah, thanks for being quick, and that's exactly it. Does anybody have a question, follow-up, or wondering for Joanne? Yeah, Sarah.
Can I jump in?
Yeah,
Thank you
please.
so much, Joanne. It's absolutely fascinating, and I'm just from our previous conversations, you know, that I get very excited when I hear you talking about all of those connections that you make through the research that you've done. It's really invigorating. I'm really interested in, from the research, this extensive research, you've drawn lots of connections, you've pulled lots of things together in order to be able to make sense of and meaning out of the research that you've done. And this leads you to the construction of new ideas. So that whole sort of change process that you were talking about earlier on, that's informed, you know, which is evidence-based, and it's informed by the research that you've done. And I'm just interested in how that then manifests itself in the implementation. I mean, you've shown us that chart at the end, but but with a specific focus to my question, which is, how do you know what thriving looks like, what human flourishing, human thriving looks like, or feels like, or sounds
Yep.
or smells like, I suppose. How do you make that final connection that what you've come up with is actually impactful?
That's a great question, and I hope to learn some more about what people think about this when I'm at ECIS as well at the conference, because I think the answer to that question is completely unique, and that's why it's making sure that we've listened to what that project brief is at the beginning, and then going, right, have we connected that with that? So that example for the school that I showed you was about female empowerment and about independence and about collaboration. And so we get key words from the beginning of that project brief. And where I have started, this is what I do now when I go to listen to someone present, I'm linking those keywords to in a very shorthand way. So I create a mind map as when I am listening to a presentation, because that's the way in which I can then start. That's my language learning model, if you like. So that's the one slide that I showed you where it said vision, policy, then to the thriving spaces. That's how I do what I do. So could I pinpoint what the human flourishing is? Some people would say, well, that's happiness. But you don't have to be happy all the time. Not everybody's going to be happy all the time. You can also be really sad some of the times, and that's really important. But so that's why the project brief and going, have we done that, and how have we done that? I've started, as you may have guessed, a spreadsheet where we're backtracking over some of the project designs that we've done previously and gone, well, this was the words that we were given. This was the look and feel we were given. These were the tools we used, grouping those together into our 10 features. And then from those 10 features, I'm taking them back to 3 categories, that naturalness, individualization, and stimulation, because I find trying to articulate to you in 15 minutes how those 10 features are connected into biophilic design is it's impossible, because because I talk so much, 2, because there's so much information behind it and so much research, that it's how much do you want to know? Because again, on my desk here is, that's amazing. I mean, that's fascinating how trees talk to each other. I mean, yes, it's amazing. And then it's like this one. It's fascinating. So many people talk about this work. All I'm doing is reading it and joining up the dots. That's it. And this is going to then be my holiday reading. Because Aristotle was talking about exactly the same thing. But when you read these and then you start to connect the words, you see it. So I'm sorry, it's a very long answer to your question. But another example from last week, learning without limits. Dame Alison Peacock said brilliantly, so she had 3 things: an affective domain, a social domain, and an intellectual domain. So she was trying to connect 3 things together. And in the affective domain, she classes as, well, you're looking for persistence but yet you're looking for stability. To want to try and persist to achieve something, you still have to have a certain amount of stability within it. Amazing. Social domain is generosity, but with an empathy. So not one of yeah, I don't need to go on. And then the intellectual domain is about lots of questioning, great, but openness. That's why you're asking all of these questions, because you're inquisitive, you want to know more. And that leads, some people could perceive that as dissatisfaction. No, it's not dissatisfaction. It's just about wanting to know the next bit and how you can, and what comes next. It's fascinating. Anyway, so there's sorry, does that answer?
That's good. Do we have another? Thanks, Sarah, and then thanks, Joe. Do we have another question there? Question for Joanne? T?
Thank you, Joanne, for your amazing presentation. I learned a lot already, and your presentation reminds me of ECI Patrick Alexandra presentation last month about creating the ecological framework where we consider, we take into consideration 3 factors, which is social well-being, intellectual well-being, and emotional well-being, and how we're going to create an environment to, to make, to make learning and teaching thrive in a way. And I have a question for you regarding creating this space in the classroom. Do we have to change the space in a way to make it thrive to every student, and how we going to do that in the classroom, for example?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And because the examples I showed you there weren't what you might perceive a typical classroom to be, but I would say those 4 images could be classrooms. So learn everywhere. And so it's what you make of it. So you could actually be in the dining room with your students and you could be learning maths. You could be in the dining room with your students learning French or learning science or anything. So for me, it's about stepping back and thinking holistically about the learning journey for that student, where they are at, and how you can help them get from there to the next piece. And that comes through linking the design of your space to the curriculum that you would like to deliver. And at certain times, it could be that a lecture theatre for 45 minutes, an hour and a half is exactly what that person needs because they can absorb it all. And at other times, it could be that actually that sat cross legs on the floor, having a chat and drawing it out on a whiteboard is exactly what they need. Excuse me for 1 second. I did say that I might just have to answer a phone call. So
that's fine. That's fine. I want to ask, take care of that, Joanne. Joanne had said that she was going to have something that might come up. I wanted to ask Paula in Peru, if you'd want to say a little bit about Habitante Arquitectura. What exactly is that? Are you comfortable sharing? Oh, she's on work schedule. I had a direct message to Paula asking if she'd say anything. I looked it up a little bit while a little bit earlier after Paula had put that in the chat, and it certainly looks very interesting. So maybe the rest of us, if you're interested, you'll want to follow up that way. Are any of you familiar with Waldorf and Steiner schools? Because there's such a emphasis on what the space looks like and colors of the rooms and so on. And I always feel like maybe they overstate what they know. Maybe they don't have the research backing in quite the same way. But they're very, very conscientious about how the space looks, which I was going to ask Joanne if they've been informing themselves there. I don't know, sir, if you know something there.
I can jump in a bit there, Paul, because I taught in a Waldorf school for 3.5 years here in this area. I live just outside of Stuttgart, and the very first Waldorf school was created in Stuttgart. So I do know a bit about it, particularly because we were building a school we were just before building a school when I was there. So actually, on Thursdays, I think it was, normally it's Wednesdays all the way around the world, Waldorf schools have their staff meetings, and it used to start at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We'd go through all the educational aspect of our staff meetings, and then probably sometime around 5 o'clock, we would start with our building design, as we were looking at how we were going to create the architecture for our building. And as you point out, there's some very specific guidelines that Rudolf Steiner gave 100 years ago about how to
exactly
in buildings. There was the whole area, the whole thing around not having what he thought were unnatural angles, like a right angle being something which is very man-made, and so none of the rooms would have any right angles in them. And so what were those rooms going to look like? And very specifically for probably about 2 years, we would then at 5, 6 o'clock in the evening start modeling. And we'd use clay to model the designs of rooms. And just like in any artistic process, there was no finished product by the end of the afternoon, which was going to translate into a new building. It was a really long and careful process of examination of what we were all doing. We used to go out into the woods and feel the different energies and temperatures of the different spaces that we were in around the school to get a feeling for, okay, and which rooms would be best suited to be in which places within the space that we were going to be building on. And as you pointed out, then the soft colors, the more animated colors, depending on the age group and the stage of the students, which way the windows would be in order to be able to play with which kinds of light patterns. It was, it was quite esoteric, and I'm sure there's room for argument for some people as to whether they agree with that or not. But I can definitely speak to the fact that the thought process, the research that went in, the architects that we work with who were creating buildings that were entirely sustainable products and regenerative educational materials and so forth, was a philosophy for itself. And it was quite fascinating. Having gone back to the school since to see the results of our efforts there, it is quite fascinating to see how many of those rooms remind me of those days of modeling 25 years ago.
Does anybody think so? Does anybody have a last question for Joanne?
Yeah, I would love to ask a question if that's okay.
Yeah, please. You get the last one.
Thank you, Joanne, for the lovely presentation. Really enjoyed it. I just wanted to ask, because obviously, you know, when you approach school leaders, I was wondering if you have kind of most effective strategies that you use to kind of secure their buy-in commitment when they kind of you get them to implement some of these innovative ideas and innovative environments.
Yeah, that's a great question. Because you have to, what I've learned is just sitting back and for them to say, well, this is the vision. This is what we'd like to achieve. And then listening to where they feel something might be missing. And for you then to say also, from our experience, here's things we've used and here's things that you could do, and then putting that into a project brief. And then when we go, well, this is the concept that we've come up with, have we heard what you've said? Is this a lot? And then going backwards and forwards to getting the detailed design. And what we're getting better at, I hope as well, is going from the concept into the detailed design even more quickly, because we've got the right questions to ask at the right time. And when you're coming at something from an artistic angle and very philosophical, those questions can be very open-ended. And what I'm getting better at is then taking that into the form and function and the architecture. So it's blending together the technical design with the philosophy to get that line just right. So that's where I believe the flourishing comes in, because you've got the sustainability, deliverability with underpinned by a very, and I was just finding a thingy in here, in this, at the back of this book was, conclusions as Steiner characterizes them are perceptions that are brought to consciousness. And so that's what I'm saying.
Can you say that again?
Conclusions, as Steiner characterizes them, are perceptions that are brought to the consciousness. And that's what the model of behavior is also showing, if you like. The environment, behaviors, and changes to brain structure and epigenetics is doing that. It's just making people more aware of their senses and their places within and where they are comfortable, belonging. Yeah, that's it.
That's great, and it's a very nice spot to finish. We try to stick to 45 minutes. I hope those folks who are listening to the recording really enjoyed it, and thank you all for those of you who are able to be here live. Joanne, we haven't met yet, but we will end of this week, so looking forward to that too. And Sarah, good luck with the conference. We know it will be very good.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing you there, and lovely that Rim and Paula came and joined us, and Ty and I have just been doing a quick exchange to say how invigorating these research engaged school sessions are. It's been really super. Thank you so much.
Yeah, really fun to learn about different things. That's fantastic. Okay, see you all. Thanks.
See you at the end of the week.
Yep, thanks, Joanne. Yep.